You're having dinner with people you genuinely enjoy. The food is excellent. The conversation flows naturally. Nothing is wrong. And yet, somewhere during the evening, you notice something subtle. You're not fully there. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a way anyone else could see. But internally, part of your mind has already left. It's already thinking about the drive home, about tomorrow, about the conversation you'll need to have next week, about the list that existed before dinner, and will still be waiting afterward. The experience unfolding in front of you, genuinely meaningful, genuinely rare, is only partially lived. It's as if you're both participating in the moment and watching yourself participate in it. Now here's the question that almost no one asks about this pattern. How much of your life are you actually present for? In 2010, Harvard researchers Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert published a study that sparked more discussion than most psychology research of the past decade. They used an unusually elegant method. A smartphone app interrupted people at random moments throughout the day and asked them 3 simple questions. What are you doing? Are you thinking about something other than what you're doing? How do you feel right now? The data came from more than 2,000 adults across 89 countries, covering dozens of everyday activities. The first finding was striking in its precision. People reported that their minds were wandering, thinking about something other than what they were doing. In 46.9% of all measurements, nearly half of their waking lives. Across almost every activity they studied, the mind was somewhere else at least part of the time, even during enjoyable experiences. Even during moments people later described as genuinely good. But the second finding completely changed the way researchers understood the phenomenon. Whenever the mind wandered, people consistently reported being less happy, regardless of what they were doing. It didn't matter whether the activity itself was pleasant or boring. The strongest predictor of well-being in that moment wasn't the activity, it was whether the person's mind was actually present for it. Killingsworth and Gilbert arrived at a conclusion that sounds simple but carries profound implications. The human mind is a wandering mind. And a wandering mind is, in terms of lived experience, a consistently less satisfied mind. But those findings don't explain why the mind wanders, where it goes, or why it goes there in particular. To understand that, we need to understand the different ways people habitually organize their relationship with time. Stanford psychologist Philip Zimbardo spent decades developing what he called time perspective theory. Its central idea is that each person has a dominant temporal orientation, a habitual tendency to mentally inhabit a particular part of time. Some people are primarily oriented toward the past. They live in memories, in analysis of what has already happened, in endless reviews of events that are over. Others are primarily oriented toward the present. Their attention naturally settles on what's happening now, on immediate experience, on the pleasure or connection available in the current moment. And others are predominantly oriented toward the future. They're constantly thinking about what's coming next, what needs to be planned, what could still go wrong, what must be solved before they can finally rest. What Zimbardo documented is that these orientations have measurable consequences for well-being. People with a strongly future-oriented perspective tend to be more productive and more goal-directed. But they also tend to struggle more with experiencing pleasure in the present, because the present is almost always being evaluated in terms of the future it's preparing, or the future it might be putting at risk. The wonderful dinner is enjoyable, but it's also a night away from everything that still needs to be done. The long-awaited vacation finally arrives, and almost immediately, the mind begins counting how many days are left. A major achievement finally happens, and the mind has already moved on to the next goal. For a strongly future-oriented mind, the present rarely gets to simply be the present. It becomes a point along a line leading somewhere else, a means, rarely an end in itself. But what makes future orientation become so dominant in people who genuinely want to be present and simply can't? The answer isn't found in personality, it's found in something the nervous system has learned, something that operates completely automatically, like a quiet but constant gravity pulling the mind away from the moment it's living and toward a moment that hasn't happened yet. And understanding where that gravity comes from changes the entire way we think about why it's so difficult to truly be present. Robert Sapolsky is one of the most widely cited biologists and neuroscientists in the field of stress research. At Stanford University, he spent decades studying what stress does to the body, and, even more revealingly, what makes human stress fundamentally different from the stress experienced by any other animal. Sapolsky's central argument begins with a simple observation. A zebra fleeing from a lion experiences intense, real, and physically overwhelming stress. But once the zebra escapes, the stress ends. The danger was real. The response was activated. The danger passed. And the nervous system returns to baseline. Human beings possess a capacity that no other mammal appears to have to the same extent. The ability to mentally travel into the future, to simulate events that haven't happened yet, to anticipate, in enough detail for the nervous system to respond, situations that exist only as possibilities. That ability is simultaneously one of humanity's greatest cognitive advantages and the source of an entirely unique form of suffering, because the nervous system does not reliably distinguish between a vividly imagined danger and one that is physically present. The stress response triggered by imagining a feared future event is, physiologically speaking, remarkably similar to the response triggered by the event itself. What this means is that human beings can generate genuine physical stress in response to events that exist only in imagination, events that have never happened, that may never happen, and that, even if they eventually do happen, still belong to a future in which no protective action is currently possible. But if anticipating the future carries such a real physiological cost, why does the nervous system keep doing it so persistently? Why does the mind repeatedly move into the future, even when doing so creates discomfort? The answer lies in what neuroscientist Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin, Madison, discovered about two distinct systems involved in processing positive experiences. The first is what Davidson called anticipatory positive affect. This is the approach system, the system oriented toward the future, toward seeking, toward anticipating rewards. When it's active, it creates feelings of motivation, excitement about what's coming next, and the sense of moving toward something meaningful. This system is driven largely by dopamine, and as we've explored in previous videos, dopamine has far more to do with the drive to pursue than with the pleasure of arrival. The second system Davidson called consummatory positive affect. This is the experience system, the system oriented toward the present, toward fully experiencing what is happening right now. When it's active, it creates the feeling of genuine satisfaction, real enjoyment, and contentment with the experience itself. What Davidson's research showed is that these two systems are not equally active in everyone. In people who are prone to anxiety, the anticipatory system tends to remain chronically more active than the consummatory system. The practical result is an imbalance in the way time is experienced. The future, with all its possibilities, risks, and problems waiting to be solved, creates more internal activation than the present. Not because it's objectively more interesting, but because the system that processes the future is turned up louder than the system that processes what's happening now. This explains something many people describe accurately, without ever finding the words for it. Why anticipating a trip often feels more exciting than the trip itself. Why planning a project often generates more energy than actually carrying it out. Why imagining a future conversation can feel more vivid and urgent than the conversation you're currently having. It's not that you're incapable of appreciating the present, it's that the channel devoted to the future is, for very specific reasons, more open than the channel devoted to the present. Think about how this shows up in everyday life. The person who spends an entire party partly thinking about how they'll describe the party to someone afterward, who tastes the food while mentally composing the recommendation they'll later give, who is engaged in a conversation while simultaneously having a meta-conversation about what the conversation means. Or the person on vacation who, on the very first day, is already mentally planning how to make the second day even better, who takes photos less to preserve the moment than to have something to show later, as if the moment needs future validation to have been worthwhile. Or the person doing something they genuinely enjoy, reading, cooking, playing an instrument, and suddenly realizes that without warning, their attention has drifted away. Now it's somewhere in tomorrow, trying to solve something that doesn't need to be solved today. In every one of these situations, the anticipatory system is occupying space that belongs to the consummatory system. The future has become more present than the present itself. If you've ever recognized yourself in this, that peculiar feeling of being exactly where you wanted to be, yet never fully there, this channel exists to put words to that experience. Every video here adds another piece to the map of how the nervous system actually works. Subscribe so the next one is already waiting for you. But there's something even more specific happening beneath all of this. Understanding that the anticipatory system is turned up louder explains why the future feels more compelling. What it still doesn't explain is the physical mechanism through which the present loses its texture. Why, even when something genuinely good is happening, the experience itself can feel slightly blurred, as if there were a thin pane of glass separating you from your own life. The answer lies not in the brain alone, but in the body. In a connection that most people would never suspect exists. The connection between the ability to feel your own body and the ability to fully inhabit the present moment. Researcher Marc Wittmann from the Institute for Frontier Areas of Psychology and Mental Health in Freiburg has devoted his work to a question that sounds philosophical but has remarkably concrete neuroscientific answers. How do human beings experience the present moment? What creates the subjective feeling of now? After years of experiments on time perception, Wittmann arrived at an answer that is both simple and profoundly important. Our experience of the present is built to a large extent from signals coming from our own bodies. Heart rate, breathing rhythm, muscle tension, skin temperature, visceral sensations. These signals, processed by the interoceptive system, the brain's ability to perceive and interpret the internal state of the body, are what anchor the mind to the present moment. It is the body telling the brain, this is happening right now, in this moment, in this body. When interoception is functioning clearly, when the system can accurately read and integrate the body's internal signals, a sense of presence emerges naturally. You are simply here. The conversation feels real. The food has its full flavor. The moment has weight. But when interoception is impaired, when the system has reduced access to its own bodily signals, the present loses its anchor. The mind becomes less grounded in the present, more free to drift into other moments in time, not by choice, but because it has lost the gravity that the body normally provides. And this is the connection that this entire video has been building toward. Prolonged states of hypervigilance and background anxiety, the very states explored throughout the previous videos on this channel, create a highly specific pattern of attention toward the body, not a broad, balanced awareness of bodily sensations. A narrow focus directed almost exclusively towards signals that might indicate danger. Is my heart beating faster? Is there tightness in my chest? Is my breathing different? A hypervigilant system scans the body for signs of threat, and in doing so, it blocks access to the countless neutral and positive signals the body is constantly sending. The feeling that the chair is comfortable, the warmth of the sun on your face, the particular tone of the person speaking to you, the kind of voice that's worth listening to completely. In hypervigilance, the body is still present, but the system is using access to the body in an extremely selective way, and that selectivity measurably reduces the experience of presence. Wittmann documented that people who report greater interoceptive awareness, a clearer perception of their own bodily signals, also report a stronger sense of being present in the current moment. Conversely, states of dissociation, heightened anxiety, and chronic threat activation are associated with a more abstract, more cognitive, and more distant experience of time. Think about how this feels in everyday life. There are days when simply being somewhere feels rich and vivid. You notice the temperature of the room. The taste of the coffee lingers. The conversation requires no effort to follow. It simply unfolds, and you're fully inside it. And then there are other days when all of that feels subtly distant. The coffee is there, but it doesn't carry the same depth. The conversation continues, but you're slightly behind it, processing everything with a small delay, as if the entire experience were happening through a thin layer of translucent glass between you and the world. It isn't necessarily exhaustion. It isn't disinterest. It's the interoceptive system operating in threat scanning mode, and, in the process, losing its ability to process what is simply okay. There is a third dimension to this pattern that psychologist Ethan Kross at the University of Michigan documented in a way that is immediately recognizable to anyone who has ever tried to be fully present and found they simply couldn't. Kross spent years studying what he calls chatter, the constant internal voice that the mind produces through language. The inner narrator that comments, evaluates, plans, that replays what was said, that rehearses what will be said, that creates, almost without interruption, a running verbal interpretation of everything that's happening. Chatter is not the same as deliberate, useful thinking. It's the background noise of automatic mental processing, the mind talking about the moment instead of actually inhabiting it. Kross's research showed that this internal chatter becomes especially intense during states of uncertainty and perceived threat. Whenever the system detects ambiguity, whenever something about the environment or the future feels uncertain, the chatter grows louder, as if the mind believes that more verbal processing will somehow resolve the uncertainty or prepare for it. And the future is, by definition, uncertain. Always. For a nervous system living in a state of chronic vigilance, the uncertainty of the future becomes a constant trigger for chatter. A continuous stream of what-ifs, rehearsals, preparations, and analyses that occupies the very cognitive space where the experience of the present could otherwise unfold. You're not simply thinking about the future, you're narrating the future internally. And that narration overlays your present experience like a second layer, turning the present into something you're commenting on while it's happening, instead of simply living. Think about the difference between listening to a song you love with complete attention, no thoughts, just the music, and listening to that same song while your mind generates an endless stream of associations about it. Who you want to share it with, the last time you heard it, how you'll describe it to someone later. The music is exactly the same. Your presence is completely different. And what makes it so difficult to simply stop the chatter, to simply decide to be present, is that the chatter isn't happening because you lack intention. It's happening because the system is responding to what it perceives as genuine uncertainty and a genuine need to prepare. And for nervous systems shaped by a history of hypervigilance, that perception is not calibrated by the objective reality of the present moment. It's calibrated by the history the system carries. There is a way of understanding this pattern, the mind that lives in the future, the anticipatory system that overrides the consumatory one, the chatter that narrates the present instead of inhabiting it, that makes it seem like a flaw, a deficiency, something that needs to be fixed. But there is another interpretation, one that is more accurate, and one that completely changes what becomes possible with this pattern. The mind that lives in the future is not behaving irrationally. It is being faithful to something it learned, something that, in a certain context and at a certain point in life, made perfect sense. A system that learned that being fully present during calm moments could lead to being caught off guard, that learned, through repeated experience, that danger often appeared precisely when attention was resting in the present rather than scanning the horizon, developed a solution. Stay ahead. Keep part of your attention a few steps in front of the present moment. Never be completely here, because being completely here once meant being completely unprotected. This is not self-sabotage. It is a survival strategy that outlived the environment that created it. And understanding that changes the question. The question is not, how do I force myself to be present? It is, what needs to change in the system so that the present feels safe enough to be fully inhabited? Marc Wittmann's research on interoception points toward a practical path that does not depend on controlling your thoughts. It begins with the body. A system that lost its sense of presence through hypervigilance can gradually regain it by moving in the opposite direction, by slowly expanding its attention toward the body itself, not to monitor for danger, but to notice what is simply there. The temperature of your hand, the weight of your body resting in the chair, the rhythm of your breathing without trying to change it, the feeling of your feet making contact with the ground. These are not relaxation techniques. They are anchors. They are the way the body tells the nervous system, this moment, this body, this now. With repeated attention to these signals, the interoceptive system gradually relearns how to perceive the present, not as territory that must be monitored for danger, but as a place that can simply be lived. This does not happen all at once. and it does not happen by forcing your attention to remain in the present while the system keeps pulling it toward the future. It happens by gradually creating repeated experiences in which being fully present without constant vigilance does not result in being caught off guard, that the present can be inhabited safely. Every time that experience occurs, every moment the system remains present and nothing bad happens because of it. The system receives new information, not a belief, a piece of evidence, and accumulated evidence over time reshapes predictions. Before we finish, there is something worth naming clearly. The inability to stay present is not ingratitude. It is not an inability to appreciate life. It is not a flaw of character or a lack of mental discipline. It is a nervous system that learned very efficiently that the future deserves more attention than the present. That anticipating danger is safer than fully experiencing the moment. That being completely here is a luxury a system built around constant preparedness cannot afford. The way forward is not to convince that system it is wrong. It is to give it enough evidence that being present is not dangerous. And that evidence comes only through experience, not through argument. Subscribe to follow what comes next on this channel, because every video builds on the one before it, and the next one connects this pattern to something almost everyone has done, but very few people can explain. Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert's Harvard study found that the human mind spends nearly half of its waking life thinking about something other than what it is currently doing, and that this mental wandering, regardless of the activity itself, consistently predicts lower subjective well-being. The issue is not the activity, it is your presence during the activity. Philip Zimbardo's time perspective theory, developed at Stanford University, describes dominant temporal orientations across individuals. People with a predominantly future-oriented perspective tend to have greater difficulty experiencing pleasure in the present because the present is constantly evaluated as preparation for or protection against the future, rather than experienced as a destination in itself. Robert Sapolsky's research at Stanford on human stress demonstrates that the uniquely human ability to anticipate the future, to simulate events that have not yet happened vividly enough to trigger a physiological stress response, is both one of our greatest cognitive advantages and the source of a uniquely human form of suffering, stress generated by threats that exist only as future possibilities. Richard Davidson's work at the University of Wisconsin, Madison distinguishes two separate systems involved in processing positive experiences: anticipatory positive affect, which is future-oriented and largely driven by dopamine, and consummatory positive affect, which is rooted in the present and tied to the direct experience of what is happening. In people prone to anxiety, the anticipatory system tends to remain chronically more active, making the future feel more vivid than the present. Marc Wittmann's research on time perception and interoception at the Institute for Frontier Areas of Psychology and Mental Health in Freiburg shows that the subjective experience of the present moment is anchored in the body's interoceptive signals. When hypervigilance narrows interoceptive awareness to the monitoring of threat-related signals, the present loses its bodily anchor, making the mind structurally more likely to drift into other points in time. Ethan Kross's research at the University of Michigan introduced the concept of chatter, the continuous internal stream of narration, evaluation, anticipation, and mental rehearsal produced by the mind. This chatter becomes especially intense during states of uncertainty, and the future is, by definition, always uncertain. For nervous systems operating in chronic vigilance, chatter about the future occupies the cognitive space where direct experience of the present could otherwise unfold. If any part of this video describes something you recognize, that feeling of being in the right moment but never completely inside it, leave a comment below. Just one word: whatever stayed with you. Because recognizing that this is not ingratitude, but a pattern of the nervous system, is the beginning of a different relationship with your own present. But there is something very specific that the mind does when it travels into the future that this video has not yet explored in depth, because a mind that lives in the future rarely spends its time making strategic plans. It isn't building schedules or organizing goals. What it does far more often, and with far more detail and repetition than most people would like to admit, is rehearse conversations. The difficult conversation that has to happen next week. The perfect reply you wish you had given yesterday. The explanation you'll give if someone asks that question. Entire dialogues with both sides speaking that the mind constructs, revises, and refines, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. Why does the brain do this? Why is this particular form of mental time travel so persistent, so detailed, and so difficult to stop? And why are the conversations that repeat themselves most often almost never the ones that went well? The answer involves something much deeper than habit or rumination. It involves the way the social nervous system processes threat, and why language is the territory where that threat most often lives. That is what we'll explore in the next video.